Good afternoon. Joining me today are Dr. Karen Salmon, the State Superintendent of Schools, and Dr. Jinlene Chan, the Deputy Secretary for Maryland Department of Health. I have always believed that every single child in Maryland deserves a world-class education, regardless of what neighborhood they happen to grow up in. And as governor, advancing that goal is one of my most important priorities and responsibilities. That's why I'm here today to talk about the terrible learning loss that's being caused by the disruption of the pandemic and why it's so critical that we work to get all of our students back into the classroom. Last May, we required all of the local school systems to submit plans for a safe reopening. And in August, all county school systems in Maryland were authorized by the state to reopen for in-person instruction. Many of the school systems in Maryland have been successful in getting at least some of their students back into the classroom, especially those kids with special needs. I want to commend all of the teachers, administrators, parents, and students who have really worked so hard to try to adapt and successfully under very difficult and trying circumstances. Dr. Salmon and the State Board of Education have continued to consult with superintendents, educators, parents, health officials, and medical experts. And a growing consensus has emerged both here in Maryland and across the country that there is no public health reason for county school boards to keep students out of schools. Now, let me say that again. There is no public health reason for school boards to be keeping students out of schools. None. This really isn't controversial. The science is clear. Nearly everyone wants to get our kids back into school. And this is a top priority that has strong and broad bipartisan support. President Biden has made the reopening of schools one of his top priorities for his first 100 days in office. And today he signed an executive order supporting the safe reopening of schools. Dr. Anthony Fauci has said our default position should be to try to keep the children in school or to get them back into school. Former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, a member of our Maryland Coronavirus Task Force, has said we have to do everything possible to get kids back into classrooms. The American Academy of Pediatrics said earlier this month, children absolutely need to return to in-school learning for their healthy development and well-being. Data from contact tracing and epidemiologists have indicated that school reopenings do not increase community spread or contribute to increased hospitalization rates. And with continued vigilance, better treatments, and the nearly 300,000 of doses of vaccines that have already been administered, our health metrics have already begun to show some indications of plateauing. This month, our positivity rate has dropped nearly 20% to 7.66%. Our case rate has dropped by 26% to 39.5%, and our hospitalizations have declined by 13%. While school systems have made strides with remote learning, far too many students remain unable to thrive in such an environment. And there can be no debating that online learning has taken an unmistakable toll on students, families, and educators. It's now estimated that by the end of the school year, the cumulative learning loss for students could equate to at least 5 to as many as 9 months on average. with the losses disproportionately impacting students of color and low-income and disadvantaged students even more. That is completely unacceptable. It is simply unconscionable. I understand that in earlier stages of the pandemic, that this was a very difficult decision for county school boards to make. But we know so much more now than we did back then. There can no longer be any debate at all. It is abundantly clear that the toll of keeping students out of school far exceeds any potential risk of having students in school where they belong. Every single Maryland student must have at least the opportunity to return to attending school in some form or fashion. Today, we are urgently calling on all county school systems to immediately make every effort to return to hybrid in-person instruction no later than March 1, if not sooner. The State Board of Education has approved safe and effective reopening plans for all 24 school systems, and state health officials are providing additional science-based protocols for safely reopening. While no school system has indicated that they have a need for any additional PPE before opening, we have gone ahead and taken the further step of providing more than 2 million masks and 200,000 face shields, along with hand sanitizer, gowns, gloves, and we have made unlimited coronavirus testing available to every county. Based on the recommendations of America's leading medical experts, Maryland has prioritized COVID-19 vaccinations for teachers and staff. Each school system has plans for vaccinating their staff, and that process is already now underway across the state. These safe and effective vaccines have made returning to normalcy possible. And getting vaccinated is critical to keeping you, your family, and your community healthy and safe. In addition, a total of more than $1.2 billion in federal funds have been made available in the most recent stimulus that just passed a couple of weeks ago, and we've made those funds available to every school system in the state. In order to address the effects of the pandemic and to safely reopen all of our schools. Yesterday, I submitted a budget to the General Assembly that invests a record $7.5 billion into K-12 education, which is $213 million above and beyond the legislative spending formulas proposed by the legislature. Their formulas would have actually significantly cut education funding due to significantly declining enrollment figures. But we are providing additional direct state investment to ensure that not only will every single penny that every single jurisdiction anticipates from the state for education be fully funded at 100%, but in addition to that, every single school system in Maryland will once again see increased investment by the state. On top of that, we're providing an additional $151 million for targeted tutoring grants in every local jurisdiction to support those students who are most at risk of learning loss, as well as a record $833 million in additional school construction funding. As I said the other day, no governor in the history of the state has ever invested more in K-12 education. I know that the vast majority of Maryland teachers desperately want to get back into school with their students and their colleagues. And I want to make it clear to the teachers' union that we fully expect teachers to make every effort to return to the classrooms. The city of Chicago has cut off pay for those teachers refusing to return to the classroom. South Carolina has threatened to take away all of their teaching licenses. Ohio will now only offer vaccinations to teachers in school systems that commit to continuing or beginning in-person learning. We do not want to have to take such actions here in Maryland. But if our school systems do not immediately begin a good faith effort to return to the classrooms, we will explore every legal avenue at our disposal. Our children simply cannot afford any more endless roadblocks or any more moving of the goalposts. The time has come to get all of our kids back into the classrooms and to reopen our schools. Every single day, I hear from parents and grandparents about how much their heart breaks for their kids and grandkids who have fallen so far behind in school and have lost hope of ever catching up, and who have not yet even had a chance to meet their teachers. By law, these decisions to reopen the schools ultimately rest with the duly elected and appointed county school boards, and I cannot order them to open schools. But I want to make it perfectly clear. I will do everything I possibly can do within the law to push to get all of Maryland's children back into the classrooms. And I call on every leader in the state to join me and President Joe Biden in making this an immediate priority. In just a few moments, Dr. Salmon will provide more detail on the reopening of Maryland schools. But first, I want to turn it over to Dr. Chan to discuss the scientific research surrounding schools and COVID-19, as well as public health protocols for getting our students safely back into the classrooms. Dr.